more. So I'm going to talk to you today, first of all, about exercise, which some people love it, some people hate it. I want to show you what the research says about it, and then you can make your decision on if this is maybe one of those strategies that would be good for you. So this first one comes from some research, some recent research, in fact, by Schuch and others, about the physical activity is actually neuroprotective. It can actually begin to help the brain. So this is a meta-analysis of a lot of different studies. And here's some of the things that they found. So any kind of physical activity, and the more physical activity, the better, is protective against the emergence of anxiety, regardless of other demographic factors. So it means it doesn't matter where we come from, what socioeconomic status, what race, that these are very effective strategies. Like physical activity is very powerful at being neuroprotective. It helps keep the brain from getting too amped up too quickly. And in particular, when we get to higher physical level activities, it's even effective against things like agoraphobia. That's where somebody is feeling kind of any kind of anxiety when they go out in the world, and it's just this general anxiety. They're not sure where it is, but they want to stay home a lot more. Or even post-traumatic stress disorder, which can be incredibly debilitating. So physical exercise, again, some people, if they have severe agoraphobia or any kind of general anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder, these are hard things to do because the body's already in an incredibly high fight or flight state, and it can be exhausting that way. So what we're doing is here protecting ourselves, so if we can get into good physical exercise routines, or find a way, even if we already have some of these symptoms of anxiety, to engage in physical activity. This is very helpful for the brain. It may not, probably won't, if you have severe anxiety, it's not going to solve the anxiety, but it can be incredibly helpful to any other intervention you're doing to just get that going. Exercise as a way of really helping the frontal lobes, the neurons, begin to work and engage more effectively. There's some more research, and particularly if we're just looking at mental health in general and depression, and this is in 2018. And what's neat about this study is this is no small study. This is 1.2 million individuals. So this is based upon a lot of collated data. So we can take a little bit more interest in this, and that, okay, there's probably something to what they're going to say. So we're going to compare people who did exercise to those who did not exercise and see how their mental health outcomes. We're going to look at three groups. One is people who played some sort of team sport like soccer or basketball, any kind of team sport where they're engaged socially as well. Those who ran or jogged, or those who did household chores. So all of these are physical activities. And how do they stack up against those who didn't do any exercise at all? Turns out those who engaged in team sports had 22.3% fewer mental health days, poor mental health days in a given month. So this was very significant. So just getting involved in a team, playing on a sport, didn't even have to be that they were the star player. Just being involved in a team sport seemed to be very protective and helpful in decreasing poor mental health days. Those who ran or jogged, 19% fewer. Now, this difference is really interesting because in some ways, running and jogging can be cardiovascularly even healthier than some of the team sports. There seems to be an important difference here, and that is the social aspect. We're social creatures. We're designed to connect. And so anytime we are connecting with other people, we're going to be rewarding our brain for that. That may account for this difference here, statistical difference in maybe team sports having just a leg up on individual type activities. But 19%, that's a really good positive outcome. And certainly is for me. I've never been a team sport player, but I do like to do individual activities, physical activities. So I'm okay with the 19%, and maybe you are too. But maybe you don't want to do either. Maybe you don't want to run. Maybe you don't want to go play a team sport. How about those who did household chores? This is considered physical activity, like some sort of physical movement, moving the body. Well, even that, just getting up and cleaning the house physically, 11.8% fewer poor mental health days over those who didn't do anything, right? No activity at all. So just being active seems to have a tremendous helpful edge to those, for those, compared to those who haven't done anything. Now, this is not a scientific study, but it's kind of some fun data. And if you're interested, you can actually go and read this article. It's at the bestmattressesbrand.org, Making the Bed. A really interesting study, and it's based upon other research. They wanted to find out, hey, what difference does it make if someone makes their bed? Because this has been out there for a long time. If you want to have a better day, make your bed. Well, they wanted to check it out a little further. And what they did, if we're just looking at those who are bed makers, who make their bed in the morning, 82% of them believe that, yeah, it helps me have a better day. And making the bed is that small task that they do to help them get the day started off well. Now, if we compare bed makers to non-bed makers, then we get this interesting outcome at the end of the day, that 74%, and by the way, this is 500 people who made their bed, 500 people who didn't make their bed. Again, not an incredibly scientific study, but some interesting data, that it seems to have a positive influence on how someone feels about their entire day. So it's just something to consider. Whether you make your bed or not, you can decide. But just doing something, getting up, and this might be part of that getting physically active. It doesn't have to be as like huge amounts of exercise, but getting the body moving, even as simple as making the bed, straightening up the house a little bit. It gets the body moving, which we need. That blood is then able to course the brain and hopefully get the neurons cleaned up a little bit, so we can have better frontal lobe activity. So back to the other research study though, because some people might say, well, yeah, those people, maybe they weren't depressed and so they're having fewer mental health days. So they actually dug into the data further, and they looked, how about those who were actually diagnosed with depression? What effect did it have with those who were diagnosed with depression? And it turns out that those who were diagnosed with depression and did some sort of exercise, again, it didn't have to be huge, maybe it's just household chores, but on average, they had nearly 4 fewer days of poor mental health outcomes in each month. So that's pretty significant. It didn't say they didn't have any problems. They had 4 less days. That's 4 more days, 3 to 4 more days that they had that could help them through the month, more positive days. So considering adding some sort of physical activity, and it seems like, at least to a certain level, more is better. And the more social you can make it, that makes it a little bit better as well. But any kind of physical activity enhances the body and the brain, and can at least take the edge off some depression and anxiety, and be neuroprotective. If you're not depressed or anxious now, it's actually neuroprotective, meaning it will help prevent anxiety or depression in the future. So it's worth considering adding some sort of physical activity to your life if you don't already have it in there.